We will begin by the first talk from Anne. This talk is entitled DOACs and Elective Surgery. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. So, 3 direct oral anticoagulants, 3 DOACs, are available in France. 1 direct antithrombin, dabigatran, and 2 direct factor Xa inhibitors, namely rivaroxaban and apixaban. Each year, approximately 1 in 10 DOAC-treated patients required elective surgery. However, perioperative management of DOACs is challenging because it's difficult to balance both thromboembolic and bleeding risk. DOAC discontinuation is typically individualized according to the bleeding risk of surgery. Low bleeding risk surgery can be performed while patients are still anticoagulated. On the opposite, high bleeding risk surgery required DOAC discontinuation to ensure minimal anticoagulant effect at the time of the procedure. For these high bleeding risk procedures, duration of DOAC discontinuation, usually proposed in clinical guidelines, is usually based on a global pharmacokinetic approach. This pharmacokinetic approach is possible because DOACs share common characteristics, including a relatively short half-life, 12 hours in healthy volunteers, whatever the DOAC. After DOAC discontinuation, the drug concentration decreases exponentially. And from a clinical standpoint, we usually consider that drug is effectively eliminated after 5 half-lives, which represents approximately 60 hours. But because it's not really convenient to propose to patients to stop DOACs 60 hours before the procedures, we usually recommend a last intake 3 days before procedure, whatever the dose regimen of DOACs, once a day in the morning, once a day in the evening, or twice daily. The second step of the pharmacokinetic approach is to consider that DOACs also have huge differences, and the most important one is about renal elimination. Indeed, approximately 1 in 3 of factor Xa inhibitors are eliminated by kidneys, compared to more than 80% for dabigatran. As a result, the elimination half-life of dabigatran progressively increases with reduced renal function, up to 27 hours for patients with severe renal impairment. This data supports the concept that dabigatran discontinuation should be based on renal function, with duration progressively prolonged according to creatinine clearance. The working group of perioperative hemostasis proposes for rivaroxaban and apixaban a last intake 3 days before the procedure. For dabigatran, due to the predominant renal elimination of this DOAC, the duration of discontinuation should be increased up to 4 days and even to 5 days if creatinine clearance is between 30 to 50 milliliters per minute. For low bleeding risk surgery, the objective is to avoid high plasma concentrations of DOAC during the procedure and not to obtain neglectable concentrations. To reach this aim, the options that are proposed are very simple. No DOAC the previous evening, no DOAC the morning of the procedure. And then, after surgery, DOAC could be restarted at least 6 hours after the procedure, and generally the day after. In summary, for perioperative management of DOAC-treated patients, the first step is to assess the bleeding risk of surgery and then to consider the DOAC. For high bleeding risk surgery, in pink, we propose a last intake 3 days before the procedure for apixaban and rivaroxaban, and 4 days before the procedure for dabigatran. Nevertheless, for dabigatran-treated patients with moderate renal impairment, we propose to increase this discontinuation with a last intake 5 days before the procedure. There is no place for bridging, no place for dosing. After surgery, we propose to restart anticoagulant at a curative dose, usually between 24 to 52 hours postoperatively. For low bleeding risk procedures, we propose no DOAC the previous evening, no DOAC the morning of the procedure. And after surgery, we propose to restart DOAC at least 6 hours after the procedure.
Thank you very much, Anne. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ariel Cohen. I'm the only cardiologist today, but member of the GIHP as all the people today. Well, I have one question for you, Anne. This is the first one. Should we perform bridging when we have to stop DOACs?
No, we don't need to perform bridging because, in fact, bridging is neither effective nor safe. What we would like to obtain with bridging is to decrease the risk of thromboembolic events in the perioperative setting, and because this bridging will be performed very carefully, we hope not to observe an increase of bleeding complication. Unfortunately, published data show exactly the opposite effect, and large cohorts of DOAC-treated patients facing surgery demonstrate that, in fact, perioperative heparin bridging is associated with no decrease in thromboembolic events, so no efficacy, and on the opposite is associated with an increase in major bleeding complications, so it raises a safety concern. Last, I think there is no rationale to stop a drug with a 12-hour elimination half-life and to replace it by another drug with a 12-hour elimination half-life. So for all these reasons, the GIHP propose not to perform bridging.
Yes, I think that this point will be discussed later also by Mark. Second question, do we need and do we have time to dose DOACs before this kind of surgery?
No, there is no place for laboratory monitoring, especially if we apply very carefully the recommended duration of DOAC discontinuation, because the pharmacokinetic approach based on DOAC as well as renal function has been validated for the whole population, so there is no need for dosing.
Okay, and well, there is one situation which is quite difficult. This is intracranial neurosurgery. How long should we stop DOACs?
This is an important point because previously we discussed about surgery with high bleeding risk, and then the question is about surgery with very high bleeding risk, including intracranial neurosurgery, but also neuraxial anesthesia. And for this very high bleeding risk surgery, we should probably increase the duration of DOAC discontinuation to be sure that the whole population will have no residual concentration of DOACs. So we should increase this duration of discontinuation up to 5 days before surgery, and again, without bridging.
Is it the same for spinal anesthesia?
Yeah, this is the same for spinal anesthesia, for all neuraxial anesthesia, and even for lumbar puncture.
And last and quick question, can we resume DOACs after gastrointestinal surgery?
Oh, this is a very pragmatic question, because patients who have undergone large gastrointestinal tract resections as well as bypass surgery may have potential alteration of DOAC resorption. So regarding bioavailability of DOACs, we usually consider that bypass surgery and gastrectomy may be associated to a decrease of DOAC absorption, whereas distal resection and colectomy unlikely alter this DOAC absorption. As a result, for bypass surgery and gastrectomy, DOACs should be avoided as the first line of anticoagulation, whereas for distal resection and colectomy, I think that DOACs should be safely used.
Thank you very much, Anne, for this clear and comprehensive review.